Okay, now we are recording.
Okay. So,
And I'd like to say a big hello to our wonderful speakers and to those watching and listening wherever you may be. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Gubbi Gubbi people, the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm joining you virtually. I'd like to note that this continent, now named Australia, was never ceded, and pay my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past, present, and emerging. I'm Dr. Simone Thornton, and I'm a member of the Australian Philosophy Research Group, or APRG. And it's my great pleasure today to introduce our speakers and kick off the first APRG Edifying Conversation. And our Edifying Conversation series is a series of dialogues between Dr. Mary Graham and Indigenous and non-Indigenous scholars from a wide range of disciplines, talking and walking together to inquire into the synergies between differing worldviews. Mary grew up in Southeast Queensland. She is a Kombu Mary person through her father's heritage and a Waka Waka clan through her mother's. She is an adjunct associate professor in the School of Political Science and International Studies at the University of Queensland, where she has been a dedicated lecturer teaching Aboriginal history, politics, and comparative philosophy. Mary has also lectured nationally on these subjects and developed and implemented the core university subjects of Aboriginal perspectives, Aboriginal approaches to knowledge, and at the postgraduate level, Aboriginal politics. With a career spanning more than 30 years, Mary has also worked across several government agencies and community organisations, including the Department of Community Services, Aboriginal and Islander Childcare Agency, and the Foundation for Aboriginal and Islander Research Action. In 1992, Mary also served as the Commissioner for Queensland Corrective Services. Mary has written and published many prominent works, including in the Aboriginal Encyclopedia, training modules for cross-cultural awareness, and a host of academic papers. Mary has worked extensively for the Foundation for Aboriginal and Islander Research Action as a native title researcher, and was also a regional councillor for the former Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission. She has worked on scripts for Murray Image and executively produced the documentary Same Place, My Home, and Making Tracks. She's a proud member of the Ethics Council for the National Congress of Australia's First Nations and has taught across the country with the Black Card. In 2015, Mary was awarded an honorary doctorate at QUT for her lifetime commitment to scholarship and community. And joining Mary today for the very first Edifying Conversation is Emeritus Professor Freya Mathews, who holds the post of Emeritus Professor of Environmental Philosophy at La Trobe University, Australia. Over the span of her career, she has authored over 100 books, articles, and essays in the area of ecological philosophy. Her highly influential 1991 book, The Ecological Self, was re-released in 2021 in the Routledge Classics series. In addition to her research activities, she co-manages a private conservation estate in Northern Victoria, and she is a fellow of the Australian Academy of the Humanities. And I'd like to give a heartfelt thank you to both Mary and Freya for being here virtually today, and ask them both, in the spirit of relationality, and by way of handing over the screen, so to speak, to share a story that in some way encapsulates the significance of their relationship to each other. Mary, perhaps we could start with you.
Yeah, sure. I'm honoured to, actually. I first, and I'm sorry, Freya, I can't remember the dates because my memory is starting to go, getting older. I can't remember the exact year, actually, but it was years and years ago we first met. I think I was working at FARA still. Yeah. And while I was there, FARA, that foundation, I was also doing writing on the side and at night at home and so on. And that paper, the philosophical underpinnings of Aboriginal thinking, The Underpinnings of Aboriginal Philosophy, and that's the eldest paper. I'm still incredibly thankful for your advice and your help and support with that. I don't think it would have been published if it wasn't for you, of course, because I'm not even an academic. I like to write like an essay type, essay type writing, and you helped me all along with it, with the formatting of it, with the ideas. We discuss those sorts of things all the time, backwards and forwards. And I think at some point over those years we met. I think it was, we met.
Yeah.
And we continued to talk about other ideas too, mainly all based on the ecology, the land, and so on. But we also got into things like women's logic or philosophy to do with women, not just being philosophers, but women in society and in our thinking and so on. So I'm very beholden to you, Freya, and really, really pleased I met you and work with you. And now we're still working with you with different breaks in between. But here we'll have another go. This will be great. Wow. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mary. It was such a thrill and an honour for me to work with you on that early paper. And I should begin by saying I am speaking from Wurundjeri country of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to all Wurundjeri people and to the land itself. And in terms of how I first encountered your work, I heard an interview with you. I think it was back in 1992 with Carolyn Jones on ABC Radio National, a program called The Search for Meaning. And I was so struck. It was a 1 hour interview. And I was just so bowled over by the clarity and conciseness with which you drew these little sharp contrasts between Aboriginal thought and non-Aboriginal thought, and it was so illuminating the way that you did it. You were one of the first people that I encountered, if not the first person that I encountered, that was offering an Indigenous perspective on Western thought, rather than the huge history of Western perspectives on Indigenous thought. And I also loved, it wasn't just what you were saying, but I loved your style of thinking. I felt a great affinity with it because it was, to me, I mean, I might be wrong about your thought processes, but to me, it seemed like it was insight-based. It was intuitive. I mean, you were well versed in, obviously, in Aboriginal consciousness and culture and so on, but you were also well versed in Western philosophical traditions. But your way of thinking about both those traditions and the comparisons and contrasts between them was this kind of insight way of thinking rather than like ponderous analysis. And I felt a great affinity with that. So it wasn't just to do with the fact that you were speaking about Aboriginal thought, but that you were speaking in a certain way that I related to, and I didn't find much. I didn't find that style of thinking instantiated much in the academy, like in academic philosophy. It was all this kind of like a dense layers of analysis, without those illuminating shafts of insight that just light up in a very simple way the important, the salient contrasts or points.
Oh, thank you.
So,
thank you.
you know, I really, I was really struck with that. And I remember many of the things still that you said in that interview. And maybe we can go on to actually talk about some of those, because I think they've stayed with you and your thinking since that time.
Thank you.
And I also really loved and was reassured by the generosity with which you were inviting non-Aboriginal Australians like whitefellas to collaborate with Aboriginal thinking and culture and, you know, two-way thinking. And I you know, and this was on a philosophical level, like let's do what is being launched at this very moment. This series in Australian philosophy is clearly intended as an instance of this kind of two-way thinking collaboration. And so I just found that very generous, and it was something that I wanted to hear. And I think it's been echoed, you know, down through the years by quite a lot of Aboriginal thinkers. I mean, most recently in the Uluru Statement from the Heart, with that incredibly generous and gracious invitation to Australia, you know, to receive, subject to Makarrata and the reckoning that follows from Makarrata, but to receive Aboriginal culture as a gift, a gift with which then all Australians can walk forward. So, you know, that has been incredibly significant to me, as well as the fact that your insights have been insights that have stayed with me. I mean, you know, you listen to the radio, what do you remember from the radio? I remember this stuff from 30 years ago.
I don't remember it all. Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
So,
thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Moved.
Well, I wonder whether we could go back to, like, the way that I remember you talking in that interview 30 years ago about land. It was very striking, but I've tried to go back and find the way that you put it in that interview in some of the subsequent papers. I can't find it, so I don't know whether I reconstructed it or whether it's not on the record. I couldn't find that interview online. You know?
I haven't searched for it, or but I haven't come across it for all this time.
No, well, I searched for it. I searched for a transcript, and I've got a cassette of it. Like, how do you play a cassette? You know,
cassette. Yes,
a cassette. Yeah,
that's my generation. Cassettes. Yes.
But as I remember it, you said something like, "Land is all there is." It was along the lines of what are the actions of an Aboriginal worldview, but it wasn't the way that you put it in that first paper of some thoughts about the philosophical underpinnings of Aboriginal worldviews. It was like land is all there is, meaning, well, land is all there is, and spirit is real. So you put those together, it means that spirit is an inalienable part of land, or dimension of land.
It's a living, growing thing.
Yeah, there's nothing else. There's only land, but spirit is part of land. like, you know, dreamings,
yes,
ancestors, other spirit phenomena. They are part of land.
So we're not alone.
Yeah, we're not
we
alone.
are not alone in the world.
We're not, you also said that we're not alone. But you started with that ontology of what is real. Land is real. All the other stuff is not real. And then you went on very beautifully, I thought, in that interview, and then in many subsequent papers too, and no doubt talks, to point out how Westerners, you know, because they're deracinated from land, because they're alienated from land, dwell in a world of ideas. You know, they can't get meaning from land because they have cut themselves off from land. So they get meaning from ideas, from abstract ideas, like ideologies, religions, isms of one kind or another. But maybe if we could just start with that ontological premise, you know, that land is all there is, and then if you could just explain that a bit more for listening, you know.
Well, I was thinking you said it beautifully in your poem. Do you want to say your poem? Because that
right.
you're saying it in that poem, basically.
That's right.
I thought it's really good.
Okay, thank you.
It's a perfect beginning. You know?
Let me find the poem. Got it. Okay. So this is a poem that I wrote fairly recently, maybe a couple of years ago. So it was just kind of expressing, I just made it up while I was driving up to the country in the car. But it kind of expressed where my thinking has got to, you know, in just a set of images. So it goes, let the mountain be your temple, the forest, your cloister, the river, your pilgrim path. Let the animals be your sangha, the birds, your angels, the insects, your Indra jewels. Let elephants be your prophets, whales, your gurus, dolphins, your blessed assemblies. Let the desert be your doorstep, stars, the needles of beauty that open your wound, sky, your liberation. Let mosses be your worlds within worlds, ferns, your lacy raiment, fungi, your labyrinth. Let fossils be your relics, boulders, your old folk, grottos, oracular, your holiest of holies. By the elements be tested, by the terrors chastened, by the hungers of predators apprised as flesh of your place. Let walking be your ground state, cognition, communion of the human with its very ground. Let earth be your soul, its inexhaustible life, your inexhaustible life, its mystery, your mystery. Let your work, your via activa, be tending it, attending to it, learning its lore, turning its pages, deciphering its scriptures. Let planting be your prayer, knowing what to plant and where, your wisdom. Let protecting, preserving, restoring be your worthiness, observing its results, your bliss. All there is this law. Follow its course. Bushes will burn for you, manna will fall, pillars of cloud will join you as escort. Of revelation, beloved, you will never be short.
That is brilliant, love. God, this, you know, Blake couldn't have done better, honestly. William Blake, you know, it's wonderful. That, geez, it's powerful and deep. And
thank you. but I guess it does express that sense that, yeah, all sacredness is,
Oh yes, definitely.
in that relationship with the land.
With it, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a wonderful start. If ever something like a book or a, I mean, eventually something will come out as a kind of introduction to the to that notion.
Yeah.
Of an Australian philosophy.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful representation of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So,
okay.
Is there more that you want to say, Mary, about land being all there is? I'm moved. I'm very moved that you're moved. Both end up crying.
No, that's right. That's lovely. Well, yeah, land is all there is. All right.
About teaching, the land is the teacher. We don't need all those ideas and isms, ideologies and philosophies and everything.
Well, I suppose it has all changed, and I suppose because we didn't start out with this relationship with land first, the first relationship, first relational, and the meaning of relational, the relational and the relationality, and so it all begins from humans with land, because humans are the ones with the, well, what would you call it? The reflective motive, and relationality and survivalism, they go together, but the land is kind of like the anchor to this relationship between both those things. So the template from this relationship with land, because that is all there is, and it's a backwards and forwards because we're nature too and all that. This relational, it counters the survivalist ethos tendencies. When things are getting really hard, or people allow a kind of hardness to come in towards the land and towards other people, of course. So it comes in and it sort of enfolds in, and it's exactly as you're saying in that poem, really. Allow all that to happen, and not treat it like it's a religion. It's religiosity in thinking, or it's not ideologized either. Nothing like that. It is a straightforward relation, but with a worldview. This is why I like that word Weltanschauung, because it doesn't seem to be, I can't think of it. You might come up with something that means something like worldview, but a deep worldview, like the Weltanschauung word means, it strikes me as. So it is all there is. It definitely is. And the odd thing is that it's at this, I wouldn't even say crossroads, really. It's sort of becoming more and more clear, right? With climate change and everything like that. It's really showing it's the land, all of it, seas, land. It's showing it's very self.
That it is all there is, yeah.
Yeah, it is showing exactly that. So they can have all the different kind of politics and isms and stuff, but
well, you say very beautifully somewhere that when humans, when their kind of primary relationship is with land, but land in this sense, it's not just land in the Western sense, the sense that comes out of reductive materialism. It's land in the sense of it's informed with spirit. It's informed with meaning,
with meaning,
it's the source of meaning. And when this is the first relationship that humans have in their existence, it teaches them not only the meaning that it imparts, but it teaches them to be in relation. And to be in relation, this is what you say, to be in relation with something larger than themselves.
Yes,
and something that is
seen.
eternal.
Yes.
You know, that immediately pulls them out of this kind of micro level, micro human level of everything mattering too much at this human level. It kind of opens people up to the cosmos, to reality right from the start, so that they're receiving meaning, but they're also kind of enlarged. And then from that largeness, all this conflict and egoism and, you know, envy and hostility and everything, it helps to just like damp all that down.
Yeah, because all those things, I think, of the human ego and that kind of spirit is always going to be there. We're always we are all, I reckon, relationalists and survivalists, and it's not either or, but it's you know, the relationalist, having learned being like the template from land. So the idea out of this reflective motive, I think, saw or sees that land didn't just invent us, it threw us up. It's the inventor, really, the creator, whatever you like to call it. But also it continues to help us to stay human. It helps us to know how to be human, actually. And that means that obligation, you know. So we're obliged, not like it's given us an invoice or something and we've got to pay it back, but that it's taught us that that's the whole idea, is to look after something outside of itself, but that us, the humans with reflectivity, they have to really know it and not just depend on those other lists of things, you know, like I sometimes talk about physicality, spirituality, what's the word? Not semantics. It's feeling. It's to do with feelings. Anyway, that word. No, I can't think of it. But it's to do with feeling and consciousness and instinct. Well, we're got reflectivity also, unlike other life forms, you know. So we've got to think really deeply about how do we get to a deep understanding of looking after. And I think I think we said, but many Indigenous people have said, that's what you get from land. It's looking after us, but it's helping to keep us on this human reflectivity obligation path. You know, we've somehow got to stick to that. And I think people haven't, a lot of other old cultures turn to the other way of doing it, of religion, you know, all that sort of stuff, religious.
It's abstract thinking.
It's an abstract thinking, yes. Whereas it's here, but it will only stay there if we continue to look after it.
Yeah.
So we can't let that lesson fade away or get rid of it because you know, there's a lot to be profits to be made and all that kind of stuff. Have to keep looking after it. Yes.
Yeah.
But not turn it into a religion either.
No.
You know, it's not something to be worshipped. Definitely.
No.
Because we don't worship nature. You know, that's absolutely no. It's autonomous, so we have to be autonomous too, but that's another thing, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I mean, a way that I've tried to make sense of that kind of worldview is to start with the cosmos. But only, I mean, I think the way that you're talking about land is cosmos. You know,
it is, yeah.
It's just not cosmos in a Newtonian sense.
No.
But starting with cosmos in perhaps, you know, beginning with cosmos in a Newtonian sense is like my way of making sense of this idea that how we become human is through our alignment with this unfolding reality that we're part of. So it's like, I start with the idea of cosmos as a living cosmos, which is, of course, anti-scientific. You know, that is not the premise of the whole of physics. But I think that you can make a perfectly rational argument to this view. You know, I mean, the cosmos, even as physics conceives it as this like vast space-time with galaxies and things, expanding and all of that. I mean, it is a self-realizing system, even from that point of view. It has brought itself into existence. It does maintain itself in existence. And if you look at the other instances of self-maintaining systems in the world, they are living things. You know, you could define organisms as self-realizing systems, things that as Spinoza, my guy, you know, Spinoza put it, they have connectivity. The will, the will to persevere in and increase their own existence. That's like, that is characteristic of living things, organisms, maybe systems, maybe the earth, but maybe the cosmos as well.
Yes, and maybe the cosmos is itself. Well, I
and then,
don't.
And then, if I can just follow if the cosmos is conceived in that way, if that's our starting point, then we, because the cosmos is viewed, well, you know, have to import a bit more into this picture. It is actually like a psychophysical unity. It's this great plenum of space and time, and physical things are like modes of this plenum. So that means that we, as modes of that plenum, we serve that larger purpose. Like, if we see the cosmos as existing for the sake of its own existence and seeking to unfold itself and increase its existence, then we're here to serve that. You know, it has differentiated itself internally into this world that we perceive around us, but including all these living things, these living, communicating, reflexive beings, you know, and they must all exist in order to serve this greater process of unfolding.
Greater process. That's
and therefore, and therefore, we need to look to that greater process of unfolding for our meaning. You know,
that's right.
Our meaning is like, when we work that out, then we will know what it is to be human.
Yes, absolutely. Look, the idea of when we're talking about you know, the Cartesian thing of I think therefore I am. If there was an Aboriginal equivalent, there isn't, but if there was, it would be something like I'm located. I am located. But it's not only in the sense of a location in the whole land. When you look at their language map, Aboriginal, well, the whitefellas map really, but showing all those places, no empty space or anything. But we're not just located in a place, we are located in time though too. And this is what this dreaming, as I understand it, could be, you know, it's really quite complex actually, but we are located in time, in events, all kinds of events though, in time. So it is like to do with space and time and so on and so on. So one side of it, what Aboriginal people talk about law, LAW, but there's the other side of LORE. It's a story of all these actual things that have happened, not just to do with you know, behaving well and don't break the law and all that kind of stuff, you know, the everyday, day-to-day thing, but law as in how all of this works, how and where do we fit in? How do we fit in with everybody else? How do we fit in with land itself? You know, what is our role in life? So coherence comes out of all of this.
Absolutely.
And to me, goes into this constant observation of things, which starts, you can track it from any amount of like time, as in tens of thousands of years, dreaming stories and creative dramas, if you like, and all that kind of thing over time. And I'm maintaining I'm saying it's like I have to talk more with yourself and with the mob, APRG mob, about all this. What do I call it? Oh God, measuring. It's to do with measuring. Proportionalizing. A proportion, working out how one thing fits with another. So observation of land itself, and the actual straightforward observation, but observation of ourselves too. I think we worked a whole lot of those things out ourselves, how to look at things and how it all but it's not a static material sort of thing, because it's always moving. Land itself is always moving, and we are changing, actually literally changing, becoming more and more reflectively human, and so on, you know, and then into predictability. So it's not really, though, a straightforward linear thing. No. For us, for example, our proportionality had to deal with the shock of invasion, and all of a sudden we're pitched back into incoherence, because couldn't understand this. It's not even in our long history. Not at all. And we know this because it's not mentioned. That is invasive, taking over other people's country and subjugating people. It's not even in dreaming stories. That's how we know. It's because they're like archives. There's lots of moments of conflict, battles, you know, warfare, but not full-scale warring, as in invading other people's territory, because land is the sacralized version of the raw material. Country, you know, country is the not territory. If it's territory, it's a different meaning, but country is, you know. And so that old well-known saying, which everybody recognizes, look after country, look after kin, meaning look after the people, your mob, all the mobs. So you have to just simply keep doing that, and then you know what's likely to happen, what's likely to, you know, that certain things will happen in a certain way. So predictability. And apparently, I was reading somewhere, and sort of talk with everybody else about in philosophical terms, it's hard to talk about or work out what predictability is, actually, because it seems like fate. It does, you know, the the fact that this has finally been invaded after all those tens of thousands of years, you know, that sort of thing, that's like fate too. You know what I mean? This is the card hand that we were dealt. That's why I'm not all that judgmental. It not only because of that, but because our logic is different too. This is something else I'd love to keep talking with you about, because we started talking about women's business, when you come up that time, you know, but carry it on, you know, part of it. Grandmother-in-law, yeah, that's exactly right, yes. Just the whole thing, and metaphysics definitely comes into it, you know, and I see this Australian philosophy, the possibilities are endless in Australian philosophy for starting to examine this. Do you know what I mean? Or to toss it over, talk about, probably for years to come, probably decades to come, you know. And that's quite right, That's quite right, I reckon, to do it in that way, you know. But yes,
and it feels like the time has come for it, doesn't it?
It's very timely.
It's like a great awakening happening.
It is. A lot of people have said that. Even Native American friends have said there's something coming, you know.
That, like the non-Indigenous people are just finally starting to get it. They're starting to get the depth and complexity of these alternative worldviews, which were were just
Yes.
so dismissed,
Yes. Yes.
disparaged, not even
Yes.
looked at.
Not even looked
Because
at.
they
Yeah.
were presented so differently. Like
Yes. Yeah. They're
the whole
exotic or
epistemology
something.
was completely different. It was like
Yes.
dancing and singing and
Yes.
stuff. And like, oh, well, obviously that's not serious.
Yes. Yes.
And it's only now, it seems, that
Yes.
non-Indigenous people are starting to get why it's necessary to enact or what is the way of knowing? What is this mode of cognition, which is, as you say, relational, which is on, it has to be on country, it has to take place on country, it has to involve some kind of address to the world, some kind of exchange, communicative exchange between people and the world. Well, how do you do that? You have to dance, you have to sing, you have to use symbols, you have to use poetry, poetic.
Especially that, yes.
Do that with
that should become a language of its own.
Yes, and it is the primordial language. It's like the language of dreams. We already know that language. Everybody knows that language.
Yes, absolutely.
It's deeply embedded in us, and it's the language that the world speaks to us if we address it. It speaks that language of things.
It does, yes.
That poetic language.
Yes.
So I think people are just starting to get why these cultures were not doing like E equals MC squared. They were not approaching the world in that way because they were more deeply hooked into reality than that distanced, abstracted way of knowing.
Yes.
Like exemplifies.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's fantastic that it's starting to happen and that it's happening.
Yeah. And
we're around to see it.
Yes, I think this is the best time to be alive. It might be a bit dangerous. And in the next couple of years, in the next decade at least, it might become pretty dangerous. But knowing, what could possibly happen, talking about nuclear, Australian nuclear sort of in getting mixed up with that, it's crazy, I think. But the thing of, there was a conversation I had with somebody once about, and this is, I'm talking about the social and political ordering kind of stuff, that has to be like turned on its head in a way, or something, I don't know what, but he couldn't understand, this is from a new economy conference, and was talking about all this sort of stuff about the law of obligation, NHS. It's a white fellow's idea, Englishman, no, Welsh, I think, actually, Welsh Prime Minister, of having a national health service which looked after poor people with really, really good best health care, free for everybody, and so on. We would recognise that as a kind of like a law of obligation. We'd see it like that. Little things like animals, all the furry beasties, they have their own little bridge over the highway or tunnel underneath. That's a law of obligation. So all this stuff about caring for something outside of ourselves, which is the crux of the relational thing, anyway, this guy couldn't understand it. Well, you can't. How can you do any of these things without a state? Without with a small s, a state, without ideology, without government control, and so on and so on. And so it's not ideology. It's not. But the idea that land itself looks after itself, well, we have to be self-regulating, and he couldn't believe that. He said it can't be something as simple as that. It's got to be more complex. Well, because of the way the world is now, you've got to have the state. No, and it's crazy.
Well, when I said
this is what the whole idea of looking after land is, to be self-regulating. Yeah, go on. Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say when I said that people are starting to get it, I didn't mean our political leaders.
No.
They could not be further from this kind of
further from it, that understanding.
No, sadly. I don't know what it's going to take, but and clearly it's not the majority of Australians who are getting it, but it is a big
but it's making a
yes. And somehow I think the statement from the heart is like almost like an expression of that. Like people felt that it was safe to make that statement. And there would be enough people in Australia who would get it, be grateful, appreciate what that was. That it was safe to do it. And I trust that process. I can't see how it's going to work. Well, but I do trust that process will work its way through all these obstacles.
And influence others, But one thing I am influenced by, in a good, I'm cheered by, if you like, is this idea that has come up, I've seen in some newspapers, but is happening, I don't know how many other countries or whether it's many people, but it's the idea of citizens' assemblies or people's assemblies, so that people can realise all these, the thing they take for granted, like democracy, is really not paying off. It's not paying off at all. That governments don't care about people, really, not really at all. They do this. Yes, absolutely. A whole system has to be rethought about and redone. And if it's possibly done without revolutionary means, because revolution is just, you put a different record on, and it's the same record, basically. It's the same story, about it's all of these other things, the problems between power and authority, between security and stability. They're things that can stand on its own. They mustn't be conflated like that. They have to be spread apart and thought about and done properly. This is why I'm really looking forward to talking more about women's logic and women truly running society, because they stand for two. We talked about this anyway.
Which can happen at that level.
They embody relational, whether they like kids or had kids or can have kids or whatever, doesn't matter. But it's in their bodies and minds and so on. Whereas men are singular, to me anyway. But somehow it has to be, they have to stand apart, like exactly on the same rank, in the same level, I should say.
A dialectic between them.
Yeah, but not warring kind of, not a aggressive fighting. Yeah. So
working towards a synthesis.
Yeah. So that would be wonderful to talk further about that. But yes, to get back to land,
well, I mean, it is significant, isn't it, that an assembly idea come out of Extinction Rebellion.
Yes,
which is all about mass extinctions and the destruction of land. Significant that this different political model has been spawned by exactly that. The assault on land has finally spawned this whole new vision, a big new vision of political relations as well.
And hopefully not ideological, not turned ideological. I hope nobody wants to do that, because that would ruin it, actually, turning it into an ism,
Which brings me to another point that I would really love to talk with you about, which is, if it's the case, and we both think that it is, that people need this direct experience of caring for country, like land in a fully fledged Aboriginal sense. It's already being having meaning, imminent meaning and purpose and community and whatnot. if it's necessary that people have this direct experience in order to be lifted up of this great bubble of abstraction and ideas and ideology and whatnot, in order to begin to understand this alternative metaphysic that we have both been talking about, you know, that reality is that we can connect as humans with reality and with the unfolding kind of purpose of reality, the connectivity of reality. Well, if that's necessary, then can you see how that can be applied, as it were, on a mass scale? How can
so I don't know if it can be
so that people can get access to that kind of direct experience of being with land, caring for land, being in place, because it's not just any old land. It's like it has to be a place, you know, that you belong to, that you commit to for the long term. What is your vision, if you have one, of how this might come to pass?
I haven't really got a vision.
You know.
Yes, I haven't really got a vision in place, but just a couple of ideas rattling around, like where, when you look at that map again, there are people who've inhabited those places for, this is what the latest research says, you know, apparently, anthropologists, scientists, that people have been in those places for literally tens of thousands of years. They weren't primitive people wandering about, you know, and all that. So now the place is full of lots, or LGA, is it? Or you can call it suburbs, or whatever it is. The idea of reducing it down to the local, you know, so I don't know what you do with states, although quite a few white fellows, including Gough Whitlam, I think, talked about getting rid of the idea of states, you know, and just going from a large country right down to the local, you know. Quite a few odd bedfellows actually thought that was a good idea. And I think that's not a bad idea to somehow, and it doesn't have to be an exact fit, doesn't have to be, but the idea of people's, what's the name? People's, what did I say before? Councils, people's assemblies. No, that's right, assemblies. So almost like a local government actually, of particular suburbs. Do you know what I mean? But roughly around, they're on the so-and-so people's land. So in a sense, there is a meeting, you know what I mean? A kind of knotting together kind of thing. But also part of that would have to be, and I'm working with the Murray School up in Brisbane at the moment, about putting into place this rites of passage, putting into the curriculum rites of passage, so that that school, but the idea would be that a whole lot of schools would have as their curriculum, and it would be as important as, more important in a way, but as important as English and maths and so, is the environment where they are, though, not in this big abstract way, you know what I mean, but their environment. So it might be badly neglected, the local creek is a wreck, you know, but anyway, they would learn to look after that place. They'd learn, and they'd learn it all the way through these curriculums right up to high school, and it would become just a general thing. So because this idea of this the obligatory thing, the law of obligation, custodial ethic, the sacralized ecological stewardship system. This is how you could put it into place. You can drop off sacralized if you want, if you're a humanist, or if you're a, I don't know, atheist or a capitalist, you know. Okay, leave sacralized out, but just have the ecological and social stewardship system. But it's all on the local, on this other idea, and this is the most amazing thing about the old Aboriginal system, is that this was right across a whole big continent, as big as, you know, the whole of Europe could fit in it. Do you know what I mean? But that's how they worked together, and that's what made it a civilizational system. So they would never have had a civilizational state, but a civilizational culture Yes.
Yeah.
That would be a civilizational culture. And for the first time, people wouldn't feel like they are completely ignored by government. But of course, what do you do about government? I haven't thought about that. You know,
Well, one step at
some
a
of them
time.
actually think it was a good idea, because the whole thing about power and ambition, and wow, that would be a very hard thing to even think of it as not existing, you know.
Yeah, I know. I don't think it's possible to try to jump to the end point and force.
Yes, I know. Yeah. You have to grow.
Yeah, you have to grow it. If you can find the right next step, that pushes in a direction, I think that's all that we can do and need to do, you know.
Yes, yeah. Well, look after important places in all of our areas, like here on the Gold Coast. It's a land of 5 rivers, Dangan it's called, or Rivers 5, that actually is. But so everybody looks out for, and of course the seafront, but the rivers, you know, and they've been terribly damaged.
The creeks are fantastic for that.
Water, like, you know.
Yeah, the local creeks here in the middle of Melbourne have attracted like such devotion amongst many local people.
Really? That's wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. They have been really.
That's a great start.
And there have been festivals celebrating, like, you know, the Merry Creek here, the return of the sacred kingfisher.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. That's a good sign.
Cultural.
Yes.
Cultural blossomings, you know, around local
that's wonderful.
land forms and land features like the waterways.
Yes.
And that seems like a wonderful step.
That's the best way. The best way is organic, you know, obviously. Organic, not overlaying it with this is a political kind of system, you know, and so on. But if you could just keep that at bay and make it as natural as, organic, but especially teaching young people, learning it, you know, and having it, somehow it's got to be embedded, you know, and then start on things like value systems and all that. Well, you know, this is the embedding of looking after land, you know.
Well,
so
the Merry Creek has been a real kind of, the Merry Creek Management Committee, the Friends of the Merry Creek series, which is an environment park on the Merry Creek. It has really, I think, led the way in this connection by, you know, you might say, singing up.
Singing it.
Like
that's exactly right.
Which means singing up, you know.
I love it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Singing it up.
It has really pulled in children.
Yes.
Like this, the festivals that we have had here to welcome back the sacred kingfisher, which had not been seen for decades, you know, because it had become an industrial drain, and this beautiful little bird that used to fly down from Indonesia every summer to its nesting grounds on the Merry Creek and down on the Yarra. After years and years of all this wonderful work of revegetation and the recreation of a culture of celebration of the creek and its environment and its life and everything,
that's wonderful.
Yes, this festival, it pulled in so many children. It would have hundreds of children learning the Kingfisher Boogie as part of the preparations to perform in the festival.
Yes.
And each year it would be
I love it.
by local Wurundjeri people, and they would choose a dreaming story to be the kind of the theme for that year's festival. And then it would be literally hundreds and hundreds of performers from the local area, including hundreds of primary school children, you know, who would all dress up in not just kingfisher outfits, but local frog outfits and local insects and local daisy bushes and local, everything.
Oh, look.
And then it would be choreographed, and they would all do their part in the big ceremony, and it would enact.
These are modern corroborees. That's what they are, really. Modern corroborees, you know what I mean, to welcome back, increased ceremonies and so on.
Yes, and so it was exactly that. These children, I mean, in the end, these festivals went on for about 15 years, and they were really big, like thousands of people attended. And they would have taken in, I don't know, maybe half the primary school children in Melbourne by the end of 15 years. So all those kids had danced the Kingfisher Boogie, had played the part of a dragonfly or a kookaburra or something in the ceremony. And it was like they were embodying this stuff. They were dancing, they were singing long before they were learning about it from them.
Isn't that wonderful?
So
that's very encouraging.
Helpful.
That
very helpful. Hopeful.
Yeah.
So
we're off to a good start, I think.
Some
Australian philosophy. That's
some
wonderful.
philosophers have called that kind of process of people, non-Indigenous people, reclaiming their home place as country in an Aboriginal sense, as the source of culture, as the source of sustenance.
The source of it,
that people should become, try to be as self-sufficient materially as possible within that place, within the affordances of that place, and that all their sense of meaning as expressed through culture, through crafts and art and dance, and story and everything, it should come from that place.
From that place, that's right.
Yeah, and they have called that re-inhabitation.
Oh,
like a philosophy of re-inhabitation.
No, that's right. A mate of mine up here, Morgan Brigg, he talks about the emplacing or embedding. No, something like emplacing kind of thing. It's the same thing though. That's exactly right. It's exactly what it should be. It should be seen as something like that, that's really encouraging, actually. Honestly, there's a guy called Bruno Latour. I don't know if you heard of him. He uses this phrase. I haven't read him, but he apparently uses this phrase about coming down to earth, coming down to earth, or coming to earth, or something like that. And it has seemed like that. I've heard other Aboriginal people say that about whitefellas they're hovering above the ground. Do you know what I mean? They're hovering above it.
Whole city.
Just about,
cities hover above.
Yes, hover above it. Now it's time to come down to earth.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great beginning, love. Jeez.
Well,
I'm
maybe
so glad this is.
Maybe that's a nice place to leave it, because it's so hopeful that maybe non-Aboriginal people can also grow ceremony.
Again, yes, absolutely.
Without like appropriating or borrowing,
absolutely.
Aboriginal ceremonies, but
that's right. Yes.
Collaborating.
With neighbours,
local people.
Yes.
Like at the Kingfisher Festival, there was this wonderful collaboration with Wurundjeri people. They were happy to contribute a dreaming story, but then all this other kind of ceremony actually just grew spontaneously out of the people and the kind of the affordances of that place, of that community.
Yes.
And yet it was powerful. It was really powerful. So
it's
maybe
like relationality par excellence.
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes.
Gil, hello. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
I just firstly, I want to thank you for some it was an awesome engagement. I really enjoyed a lot of that exchange. And there's just a quick question I'd like to ask of that is and in particularly when you were talking about collaboration, where you finished off just then, is the notion of where governance then fits into Aboriginal culture in relation to what you were talking about now, and whether it's possible that Aboriginal governance, actually has a much better way of being able to provide us with a way of looking at land than the current liberal politics does, and what implications might that have for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cooperative, collaborative governance as a new way of looking at, the current system we have.
It's an ancient way, but a modern, in a sense, it's a funny kind of modern way too. I mean, that people are looking at, So here on the Gold Coast, all of our lot here, I'm part of an organisation, a Yugambeh Alliance kind of group it is, but we're very interested in governance because we here, like many other areas, quite often are fighting among themselves about different things. The big cause of it was from long ago to do with the beginning of native title, and there are still dregs of that around. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of those relationships have to be kind of fixed up, basically. So we're trying our best to look at that and still all the time with sharing responsibility for environmental stuff too, obviously. Here, the Gold Coast City Council works quite often with our lot sometimes, but quite often, this is the terrible example of development for the whole country. They just look at the Gold Coast and everybody says not like that, so that's an ongoing thing, but we're trying to bring out more and more to our own mob, because we have to actually literally get back into the habit of this governance, which means, a lateral system or heterarchy in political theory, it's flat, not a hierarchy. Definitely gender governance, a gendered governance. We tried that with the National Commission. No, what do you call it? National Congress. That's it. It got allowed to go, and then got swept away like every other experiment in Aboriginal representation. So we had actually set it up exactly along our own old lines: gendered governance, no hierarchy, and by the way, no democracy. Not democracy, a little bit of democracy, because some people did want democracy, Aboriginal people. So we thought, well, we don't want to set people up to be resentful about things, so we'll have a little bit of it, but we won't have it like running the whole thing, because they're not Democrats, not really. It's a different system, consensus, and so on and so on. So as we are going along, and as we have been, different Aboriginal people have been writing about it though too, and doing things in other areas, experimenting, talking and arguing, of course, about it. You won't get away from arguments, basically. But decision making and conflict management, not resolution, but management, because it's an acceptance of conflicts. It's just the real. That's the real thing of being human. You're going to have conflict sooner or later. But work out really good ways of managing this conflict. You manage it with the idea of, I'll send you this, I don't know if I have, but Simone, the thing of autonomous regard. Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
No, I'll send it to you, okay. And a couple of other things too. But it's the way we're supposed to deal with each other, and you see it among older Aboriginal people quite often. It's a particular way. You could say it's a diplomatic way, but knowledgeable people. So if you go, so instead of democracy, instead of any other system, you have knowledgeable people running things which seems to me like perfect logical sense. That's what you have to have. Women are part of the, a major part of the running after, of course. Balance, balance and all that. What else? Oh yeah, ethics, of course. Yeah, I've found, well, I've yet to find a word, an Aboriginal word for ethics, but in Melbourne, Uncle Lewis, I don't know if you've heard of Uncle Lewis. He's a brilliant at his language. He's an expert. He's a adjunct professor at the, I don't know which, South Australia. No, that's right. Sorry, South Australia. And he is looking for that at the moment. He's going through different languages. He speaks not only his own but others too, of course. So far, we've always just assumed that the word law, L-A-W-L-O-R-E, that's all about ethics. That's what it actually means in our terms. So we use that all the time. But you can tell how people talk about it. They're talking about ethics, actually, of how we treat one another and the kind of systems of governance that we have to have, absolutely have to have, and all that. Yeah, so Gil, just to answer your question, I don't know. That's as far as I think that we're heading towards,
No, I'd love to receive a copy.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So
I've been looking at the literature of commoning a lot.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
I'm only catching up
commons.
because it's been something that has been generating a lot of excitement for a long time. But I've been catching up with it, and it is very democratic. It is about people sharing on
the
very equal basis and having an equal say, and all of that.
All of that, yes.
So I'd be really interested to see alternative, that is not based on sheer equality. I'd love to do that.
That's right. Yes, yeah. It's got to be balanced, as in natural, organic, as we're saying, because equality sounds it's almost too political, and sooner or later somebody will get pissed off with it. You're making us sort of doing this. Whereas balance is a natural thing. It's in nature and everything. But what I'll do is I'll send also this conversation between an older English gentleman. Was asking questions, trying to work out the difference or is the similarity between the idea of the commons and Aboriginal ideas about land and so on and so on. So I wasn't quite sure how to respond to him, because I didn't know all that much about the commons. So I asked another English younger bloke who's a political scientist, he is, would you answer this older man? And he wrote out a whole thing. So I'll send that to you. I'll send that to all of you.
That'd be great. I'd really like to compare them.
Yes, because he did. This younger fellow, he'd been out here, worked with myself and Morgan, been in UQ for a while, and all that. He had a good explanation for the older fellow. So it's not exactly the same. It's
but I mean, that's why it's really interesting.
Yes,
I think that's really interesting.
If that's the way to go, the interest, the track, the path,
Because democracy, of course, has become such an ideology. It's a sacrosanct ideology in our society, and if it's not working, we're in trouble.
That's right.
Trying to and I don't mean that the alternative, like, we don't want to move to all the worst alternatives.
All the other isms.
But it would be good to see the the good alternatives.
Yes.
Is rather blunt instrument of democracy.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's apparently how that came about with this people's or citizens' assemblies. They were sick and tired, a whole lot of people, of governments mouthing the things about democracy, but doing anything but, anything but. and it's so obvious. Even the Americans, what were they called? The Q. Oh, I forget what they were called.
QAnon?
No, not QAnon. Oh, this is about back in the 90s, is it? 90s, whole big movement. Anyway, there were all riots in the streets and everything like that. And they were trying to get rid of the 1%. Do you know what I mean? The ones that are actually controlling. I forget what they were called now. Yeah, there was a name for them, eh?
Yes.
And they were arrested and everything, and they're mainly, I thought they were mainly white middle-class people, and they were being arrested by the police, thousands and thousands of them, because they're talking about getting rid of the 1% and the great gulf between people very wealthy and people that millions of people poor. It's gotta that has got to happen, somehow. I don't know how, but
well, I can't see how these large-scale changes in governance can occur. I just can't. I can't envisage how they can happen, and also like the fundamental institutions like private property.
Yes,
as long as we've got private property, how can we transition to a society that is devoted to the care of land? I mean, it's just like a complete contradiction.
It's completely round peg in a square hole. Yep.
And everything in liberal democracies and capitalism rests on private property, and it is just completely cemented into the
Talk about embedding
of our whole society. But rather than kind of bang my head against that impossible problem, I think I can just try to envisage ways of enacting alternatives within these larger structures.
Yes.
And hope that these alternative practices and alternative formations, will gradually have an effect. I can't see any other way.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's right. And the thing of corporations, it was a shock to me a couple of years ago to discover corporations have more rights than people. I thought, how on earth did that come about? How did that get through? You know what I mean? And of course, governments being the servants or handmaidens of corporations, of course, it wouldn't take much to do that. But yes. So, Simone and Gil, do you want to? I don't know.
Yeah. I was just struck by what you said there, and when we always think of Abraham Lincoln's idea of governance of the people, by the people, and for the people, there seems to be this sort of lack of mention that people actually exist on land.
Yes.
So when you've got governance of the people, by the people, and for the people, and the way I understand you talk about survivalism, then we get a problem of land just being a resource for one's survival rather than
that's right.
What I think you're saying is that true, that if governance was a form of management where land is actually fundamental, an obligation, that governance becomes really about trying to understand what our obligation is in terms of people in relation to that land. That would completely, for me,
turn it up on its
head. Turn it on its head, in the way that we view any kind of system, including democracy, because we don't exist on nothing. We exist on this land, which.
Yes, and we do have. Do you reckon this? I don't. But we do have to take into account that there's a currency. There's a thing like money or something like that. Because I think these people who would be our critics. Our critics. They'd say, "Oh, you're a what's that word? You want to go back to the past? What do you call them people? I forget what that word is now. Hey." There's a famous word, eh? Oh, romantics. Yeah, romantics. But against
Luddite?
anything modern.
Luddite? No, not a Luddite.
Luddite, yeah, well, that might be Luddite, but it's something like that anyway. Anybody who, yes, we are those people who are, you just hate anything modern, you know, you don't like anything, but, and then they say really pointed things, quite cruel, I think. Yeah, what do you think you're going to do without your iPhone, you know? Yes, well, that's another argument for another day. But it's true. It brings up all kinds of things, you know. Oh, what's that word? It could be Luddite. Yeah, people who don't want to change, you know.
Yeah.
Who hate change, actually hate change, you know.
Reactionary.
And we're not. We're reactionary. Yeah. I'll think of it
but
after.
I mean, the problem with trying to
we're trying to save the planet.
reorient, you know, governance towards the management of land as its primary obligation or responsibility is, you know, I mean, we can't do that. We can't just overturn the whole liberal state with its basis in private property and do that.
Yes,
so, you know, that it seems to me that the only we can kind of fantasize about blueprints of how things could be and should be, but at a practical level, all that we can do, I think, is to try to create these alternative practices or alternative structures, you know, in contexts in which they are possible. Yes. And then just hope that change will organically flow from that. I can't see any other way than that to bring about change.
And I reckon you're quite right in terms of making deep change, and I think that's why the idea of Australian philosophy, we're not looking at like achieving too much, even, you know, this time next year, but it would be years and probably maybe even generational, you know, but somehow something's got to come up for this country and particularly this country, because it's, as a, you know, I said a couple of times, the history of this country, plus what it's like now, but also it's in the right place at the right time with the right people too, you know, for major change. Because has always been, I think, I probably gone further down in the last couple of decades, but the feeling of there being far away from where all the action is in Europe, England, America, you know what I mean? But actually there couldn't be in a more right place here. I agree. Really, with all those wonderful, for all their problems, you know, great old civilizations to the north, and with us, do you know what I mean? We invented actually, and I usually don't say it like this, but we invented multipolarity, you know, which is what a lot of people, thinkers in politics, think about now. I call it multipolarity with Aboriginal characteristics. You know, just like the Chinese talk about, you know, socialism with Chinese characteristics, you know. So this is our characteristic, but it's true. When you look at that map, that's a multipolarity country and multipolarity in one country. And the idea of the law of obligation, it doesn't end. Before it was just like all of our places, you know, all of our various places working in with each other. But now that law of obligation has to be kind of very broad now and look at the whole country. So we've got to make sure that, you know, future generations, all of them, you know, grow up with an idea that, you know, war making and, you know, being, you know, pursuing wealth and power and all that, they're literally barbaric systems. They are. They lead to barbarism. They're barbaric systems. So this place is not going to be like that. So it's kind of a law of obligation that we've got to make sure of that, you know. That is all 3% of us as against 97%. But of course, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be 3% plus any number, big question mark number. against the whole lot, and hopefully it'll balance out sort of, and get the other side will get less, and
Well, Aboriginal people in Australia are really uniquely placed to have discovered these systems, aren't they?
Yes.
Because of the
They are
incredible longevity of
Yeah.
inhabitation here, and
Yes.
because, as you were saying before, of that incredible stability.
Incredible stability, yes.
So,
And it can be done.
A unique kind of laboratory of
That's exactly right.
Discovering what it is to be human. I mean,
That's right,
nobody else on earth, so far as I'm aware,
Yeah.
has had the same kind of opportunity to do that.
That's exactly what Morgan, how he talks about it. He says this is it's a long-term experiment in political and social and political order making. You know, and that's exactly what it is. It is a long-term experiment. It'd be wonderful if Australia saw itself in this way too. And if ever I saw say no to America to the next war, that would be a wonderful start, wouldn't it? That would be fantastic, you know. But geez.
Well, I think we just have to believe.
Believe it will happen. No.
We have to have, I don't usually think in terms of faith, but we just perhaps need to have faith and act as if we have faith, and
that's right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, I believe that
in itself brings a certain power.
Yeah.
It is like such an incredible opportunity, not just for Australia, but for the world.
For the world, eh? Yes, it definitely is. Jeez. No, that'd be wonderful. Yeah.
I think that fits really well with describing what the APRG is trying to accomplish. Am I right in saying that, Mary?
Yeah, I think I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that would be wonderful. I know you all know. Oh well, you know more than I do about that America had its own, at least one or two or three philosophers of their own, which were ignored, who were ignored, about trying to start a new, kind of thinking, because colonialism, it is always looking ahead, but very short term. What can be gained without a reflective motive? It's an unreflective motive we want, and that's it. This is how it's going to be, blah blah blah. But yes, it'll be wonderful if that kind of thinking becomes just less and less powerful, even if it just becomes a little bit less and less powerful. That would be wonderful to see that.
I think that's achievable.
Hey, what?
I think that's achievable.
I think that's achievable too, I really do.
Just as an incremental process. We can, it's a kind of beacon to go forward with. In such a dark
That's right.
time.
Yeah, that's why I try and do like two contradictory things. I don't like judgmentalism, and this is what I'll send you stuff about the logic too. Logic of that's what I've been writing about it. All perspectives are valid and reasonable, not so not to lessen judgmentalism. So I don't talk about that in to do with whitefellas, to do with colonialism, because I really do think that in this strange way, the land really does make us. In all kinds of ways, though. In all it's just pure luck. Like the hand of cards we were dealt. It just happens to be a huge island continent, and nobody bothered to come here to take over until 300 years ago. They were sailing around. But then they came. Whereas the other place, people were like dominated or hunted, and they'd move and they'd invade somebody else's place or come into someone else's place, so that you can't get away from it. Big continents that are joined up. You know what I mean? So that, in a sense, is they're not going to end up with our kind of.
They're not.
So that's why I go a bit softer on the judgmentalism. At the same time, I'm quite you could say judgmental, but the idea of trying to fight back against barbaric systems, and that could be anything, not just having wars, but putting 10-year-old children in jail. Do you know what I mean? Like in the Northern Territory, you know, they're barbaric systems that turn people barbarians, you know. So somehow we've got to avoid that, got to, you know, take care of that.
Yeah.
And anyway, can I ask one question? In terms of changing thinking around, I was wondering, because I'd really like to, just out of curiosity, hear what Freya thinks about the idea of autonomous regard. So I was wondering, Mary, if you could give us a brief outline of what autonomous regard is, and then if we could hear Freya's thoughts. That's not too much to ask.
No. Well, very briefly, Freya, it's the acceptance of that we're all autonomous beings, all of us. Women are definitely autonomous beings. They're not handmaidens, you know, and so on. But everything out there they're autonomous too. Yeah. They own themselves. So we have personhood. There was a, what do you call it? What do you call those little things running around up here anyway in Queensland? Gecko. What are they? Gecko. Yes, gecko. So we have personhood, but geckos have geckohood. Do you know? Their purpose in life is to maintain or perpetuate geckoness in the world. Absolutely. They belong in the world, with the world. So we are too. So we're autonomous, and we're autonomous, and we recognise that the other person is an autonomous person too. You know, that goes for individuals, family groups, communities, tribes, clans, whatever you want to call it. And also you can take it as far as a state with a small s, you know. And then the way of behaving with one another. Now it's not kumbaya. We all join hands and become, you know, family and all that. It is, I like the word, why I like the word regard is like, it's like respect multiplied 10 times. Because regard is a way to do with seeing, you're seeing, you know, you're viewing, but it's also combined with respect and how you behave, ethical way of behaving towards one another. But all of it is done not by words, it's just simply by looking at the other. You already have this autonomous regard for the other. So I think we learnt that. And I'm not saying that's like a perfectionist thing for Aboriginal people. We're good and everyone else is bad sort of thing. It's a way of, it's a key thing towards, as part of the relational. That's really what it is. It's a way of managing the ego also, because you're not all that sure about, this is autonomous regard between people who don't know each other, you know, you're not sure. So you take a whole lot of things into account, like protocols. That's why protocols are so important. It's not just good manners, it's a way of a constant prompt to maintain peaceful relations between each other. That's really what it is. But it's very worthy of other things too, you know, and so on. So you don't talk about it. It's not something to be spoken about, autonomous regard. It really is a way of being in the world, actually, with other people. So it's not necessary. It's not kumbaya. That's all. Because I was trying to always explain, or not explain, understand. Growing up, actually, watching how Aboriginal people talk to each other, this is even when they're having fights too, you know, because the autonomous regard is there, even if you're with people you don't like. And they might be a traditional enemy even, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know, you just don't get on with them. So there's an acceptance of things. There's an acceptance of certain things in life. So you're not trying to convert them to anything, because that's against it, autonomous regard. You know, so it really is, I can't explain it in a deeper way.
No, you are explaining it, I think.
Yeah, it just hasn't been named though. I know the old anthropologists always want to say, oh, well, no, we don't have, we have culture, but basically what we really have is customary law. You know, we only have custom. And they always described Indigenous people as only having customs, you know, that's it. So they're not really well-developed people.
No, that's all ridiculous.
You know, all that sort of rubbish.
We know that it's just total rubbish.
Yeah.